Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are jumping right into Japan's Global Green Transformation, or GX as it's known.
Right. And there's a lot to unpack here.
A ton. We've got a stack of recent reports, budget approvals, you name it. And our goal is really to figure out how Japan is trying to, stay the course on its 2050 net zero goals.
Especially when you see other major economies maybe starting to waver a bit on their own commitments.
Exactly. So where do we even start, I guess, with the money?
You have to start with the money. The sheer scale is, it's the whole story. We're talking about a draft budget for fiscal year 2026.
And it's huge, right?
It's staggering, approaching 122 trillion. So that's what, about $780 billion?
Wow. Just for context, that is more than the entire GDP of many developed nations.
It is. And the key part for us is that over 600 billion of that is specifically carved out for this GX and renewables push.
So they're really signaling this isn't some side project.
No, this is a central economic pillar. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it seems like they're not just, spreading that money around. They're making some very specific targeted bets on new technology.
Very targeted bets. High risk, high reward stuff.
Like those next generation perovskite solar cells we've been seeing reports on.
Mm-hmm. But the really big one is this a 2.1 trillion 5-year program.
And that's the one that subsidizes factories and these huge data centers.
But, and this is the key, only if they're powered exclusively by nuclear or renewable power.
Right. So it's basically using government incentives to enforce corporate decarbonization. It's pretty unprecedented.
And that pressure extends right into their heavy industry. You look at a company like JRA.
Their biggest power generator.
Yeah. And they're getting heavily subsidized to pioneer controversial technology, ammonia co-firing.
They're aiming for 20% co-firing at the Heikkinen coal unit, I believe.
By fiscal year 2029, yeah. It's a core part of their strategy to keep using that existing coal infrastructure, just cleaner.
But is 20% really enough to hit net zero? Or is it more of a political stopgap? Because the long-term vision seems to shift entirely to hydrogen.
It does. It's a pivot to becoming a renewable energy import powerhouse.
And they're backing that up with a $2 billion fund to build the world's largest liquefied hydrogen carrier.
A 40,000 cubic meter capacity ship. It's a massive undertaking. They're building an entire global supply chain from scratch.
And speaking of future tech, we have to touch on nuclear fusion.
Right, because their approach is so unique. It's this public-private partnership model. They're opening up 3 national R&D labs to private companies.
To try and accelerate commercialization for the 2030s. A very different model from what we see in the US or China.
Exactly.
But, all these huge long-term plans for fusion and hydrogen, they need stability and public trust today. And that's where the headwinds really start to kick in.
You have to talk about the nuclear scandal.
Yeah. The Chubu electric power incident.
Oh.
The Hamajoka plant.
The data fraud concerning earthquake risks, you couldn't write it. The fallout from that is just severe.
It sent the safety screenings for 2 of their key reactors right back to square one, didn't it?
It did. And if you connect that to the big picture, Japan needs to restart over 30 reactors to hit its national goal of 20% nuclear power by 2040.
How do you do that when public trust is so eroded? You need local consent for these restarts.
And that consent is just not there right now. It makes that 2040 target look extremely difficult.
And the challenges aren't just in big infrastructure. There's this blind spot in their resource security, with EVs, for example.
Right, so the EV market is finally taking off. Toyota actually just surpassed Nissan in sales. But the problem is what happens to the batteries.
This is a fascinating point. They're being exported.
Over 80% of used EV batteries are just shipped overseas inside the used cars. We're talking about 17.5 billion worth of rare metals lost every year.
A whole urban mine that they're just giving away. They need a national recycling strategy, and fast. So when you step back and look at the whole picture for our listeners, you have these billions being spent, these massive bets on future tech, but then these immediate serious threats. Why does it all feel so vulnerable?
I think it boils down to 2 things. Competition and adaptation. Can Japan really attract the global expertise to keep a competitive edge, especially with China's dominance in green tech?
And then there's the adaptation piece, the immediate impacts of climate change.
And that's the urgent question we're left with. They're funding these multi-trillion yen projects for the future, but what about today? Japanese seas are warming at over twice the global average.
You see it in things like the Hokkaido salmon catch, which just plummeted.
It dropped to 1/5 of 2022 levels, a catastrophe for that community. So the question becomes, can these massive investments in next-gen tech do anything to protect the livelihoods and culture that are at risk right now.